Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into this idea, right, that maybe, just maybe, doing more, faster, isn't the be-all and end-all of, actually producing amazing work.
It's funny how we've come to almost glorify being busy, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's a badge of honor.
Right, and we're constantly bombarded with these productivity hacks and tips, but what if those are actually counterproductive in the long run? That's what we're going to dig into today with slow productivity. I'm joined by an expert to, you know, unpack all of this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
So to kick things off, I want to talk about John McPhee. He's this amazing writer for The New Yorker, like the kind of writer who spends months, years even, crafting these incredibly detailed pieces.
Oh, his process is fascinating.
Yeah. And there's this one story about him working on this super complex article. I think it was back in '66. He had stacks of research, notes everywhere,
Ah,
the kind of situation that would make anyone feel overwhelmed.
I can only imagine.
So what does he do? He doesn't try to power through it. Instead, he ends up like drawn to this picnic table in his backyard under an ash tree.
That's where the magic happened, huh?
Exactly. He spent weeks there just thinking, organizing his thoughts, really letting the structure of the article reveal itself.
It's amazing how sometimes the most productive thing we can do is just slow down, you know?
Totally. And it
Yeah.
makes you wonder, how often do we miss those breakthrough moments because we're so caught up in this frenzy of, well, frankly, pseudo-productivity?
Yeah.
Focusing on looking busy instead of actually doing meaningful, thoughtful work.
Oh, absolutely. And that pull is strong, especially these days. It's like we're drowning in to-do lists, emails, notifications, this constant low-grade panic.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
I read a study by McKinsey and Lean In. They found that more and more employees are feeling burnt out. And it makes sense, right? When you're constantly expected to be on, to be responsive, it takes a toll.
It's not sustainable. It makes you wonder what we could achieve if we took a cue from, like, the great thinkers of the past.
Oh, I love where you're going with this. Imagine someone like Marie Curie, right on the cusp of a groundbreaking discovery that changes how we understand physics. What does she do?
Don't tell me. She takes a vacation.
She goes on vacation.
No way.
I know. It's incredible, right? It shows that sometimes these big breakthroughs, they don't happen in the middle of all the chaos. They happen when we give ourselves space to breathe, to think differently.
It's like giving our subconscious permission to work its magic, right?
Exactly. So what if, instead of praising the hustle, we tried a different approach? What if we embraced slowing down, giving ourselves the time to do our best work?
That's what slow productivity is all about.
And to really understand it, we need to delve into its three core principles. So let's start with the first one. Do fewer things.
Music to my ears.
I know, right? Less work. Who wouldn't want that? But it's deeper than that. It's about understanding the hidden costs of a jam-packed schedule. It's what's called overhead tax.
Oh, overhead tax. Tell me more.
So think of it like this. Every commitment, project, email chain, it all comes with this like administrative burden, right?
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
The mental energy of switching between tasks, the time it takes to get back in the zone after being interrupted, even the emotional labor of managing everyone's expectations, it adds up.
Like this invisible weight we're all carrying around.
Precisely. And it can have real consequences. There's this story of Jonathan Frostick, a program manager at HSBC, who had a heart attack, partly because of intense work overload.
Wow. That's a stark reminder that this culture of busyness has a very real cost.
Absolutely. So how do we escape that cycle, especially when there's always more to do? How do we embrace this idea of doing fewer things?
Well, one way is to get really clear on our missions.
Missions. What do you mean by that?
Think of them as your big picture goals, the things that truly matter in your work, in your life. They're like your guiding stars, helping you decide what deserves your focus and, maybe more importantly, what you should say no to.
So going back to John McPhee, his mission might be to write those deeply researched, beautifully written articles.
Exactly. And for someone else, it might be building a business, becoming a master teacher, whatever really lights their fire.
Okay, that makes sense. But how many missions is too many?
That's the key, right? If you've got, say, 5 or more major missions going on at once, you're probably spreading yourself way too thin.
Yeah, I can see how that would lead to feeling scattered, overwhelmed.
Totally. Ideally, stick to like 1 to 3 core missions that you can really pour your energy into.
Focus on quality over quantity.
Right.
Speaking of which, there's this great example, Jenny Blake. She had this super successful business, consulting, training, all that, but she was juggling like 10 different income streams.
Oh, wow. Talk about spreading yourself thin.
I know, right? And she was feeling it. So she makes this bold decision, right? She cuts way back on those income streams, focuses on just a few things that really aligned with her core missions.
That takes guts.
It does. But here's the amazing part. Not only does she feel less stressed, more fulfilled, but she manages to cut her workload down to like 20 hours a week.
You're kidding. See, that's what I'm talking about. Doing fewer things, but doing them really well.
It frees up space for deeper thinking, creativity, all those things that lead to truly great work.
Absolutely. It's about shifting our mindset from this constant do more, to do what matters most.
I love that. And it leads us perfectly to the second principle of slow productivity, which challenges this, this deeply ingrained idea that we have to be on all the time.
Grinding it out day after day.
Yeah, pushing ourselves to the limit. But what if that's not actually the best way to work?
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right. And that's where this idea of working at a natural pace comes in.
Okay, so what does a natural pace actually look like?
Well, this might surprise you, but we can actually get some really cool insights from, like, anthropology.
Anthropology, how so?
So researchers have been studying hunter-gatherer societies, like way back in human history, to understand how our ancestors approached work and survival.
Interesting. Taking it back to our roots.
Exactly. And what they're finding is that these societies didn't work in this constant linear way that we're so used to now.
It wasn't just like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Nope. It was much more episodic. Bursts of intense activity followed by periods of rest, in tune with their energy levels, the rhythms of nature, that kind of thing.
It makes you wonder if maybe by ignoring those natural rhythms, we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot when it comes to productivity.
Right. And there's this fascinating study by Mark Dybel and his team. They were studying the Acta people of the Philippines, a hunter-gatherer group.
Okay, what did they find?
They compared the Acta's work patterns to their neighbors who were rice farmers, a much more, structured, demanding way of life.
Right, so one group working more intuitively, the other more by the clock.
Exactly. And the differences were striking. The hunter-gatherers, they worked in these bursts, then rested, while the farmers worked from dawn till dusk, pretty much nonstop.
And what about their overall productivity? Did it suffer because the hunter-gatherers were working less?
That's the thing. Despite working fewer hours, the hunter-gatherers were still able to provide for themselves, and they weren't experiencing the same level of stress and burnout as the farmers.
Wow, that's pretty compelling. It makes you think twice about whether this whole always-on mentality is really serving us, especially for work that requires, deep thinking, creativity, all those things that take mental energy.
Absolutely. It's about working smarter, not just harder.
And honoring those natural rhythms of energy and rest.
Exactly. And speaking of rest and its role in productivity, we can't forget about Ian Fleming.
Oh, the creator of James Bond. Okay, I'm intrigued. What does James Bond have to do with slow productivity?
Well, as it turns out, Ian Fleming, he was a master at incorporating rest and breaks into his creative process. He famously wrote those iconic spy thrillers during retreats to his estate in Jamaica, Goldeneye.
Okay, now that's what I call a writing retreat. I can just picture him lounging by the pool, martini in hand, dreaming up those incredible plot twists.
Honestly, you're not far off. He had this whole routine. Wake up early, right until lunchtime, then spend the afternoon swimming, snorkeling, enjoying island life.
Talk about a dream schedule. But it's also, strategically brilliant, right? He's giving his mind that time to recharge, to process, which probably led to even more creative breakthroughs.
Precisely. And I know most of us can't just escape to a Jamaican villa every time we have a deadline, but there's a real lesson there.
It's not selfish to prioritize rest and recharging. It's essential, not just for our well-being, but for the quality of our work, too.
And it all ties into that idea of finding a sustainable rhythm, right?
Exactly. Doing our best work without burning ourselves out in the process.
So how do we actually make that happen in our own lives? We've got deadlines, meetings, all those demands. How do we incorporate this idea of working at a natural pace?
That's the million-dollar question, right? There's no one-size-fits-all answer, but a few strategies can make a big difference. One of the most powerful and maybe the most counterintuitive is to actually double your project timelines.
Wait, double? You're
Yeah.
saying intentionally give ourselves more time than we think we need.
Exactly. So you'd normally give yourself 2 weeks to finish a project. Try giving yourself 4. Used to aiming for 4 chapters of a book a quarter, cut that goal in half.
So we're taking the pressure off, right? Allowing ourselves to work at a more sustainable pace. without that constant feeling of urgency.
Precisely. And here's the thing, when you create that space, you often end up less stressed, more creative, and you produce higher quality work.
Because you have that mental bandwidth to really explore, to iterate, to refine.
Exactly. It's about trusting the process. Knowing that slowing down doesn't mean sacrificing quality or productivity. In fact, it often leads to the opposite.
It's about quality over quantity, which brings us to the third principle of slow productivity, obsess over quality.
This is where we shift from just managing time to really focusing on creating something we're proud of, something with lasting value.
Striving for excellence, even if it means slowing down, being more intentional.
Exactly. And one powerful example of this is the musician Jewel.
Oh, her story is incredible. For those who might not know, she was discovered living in her van, singing in coffee shops.
Talk about humble beginnings.
Right, raw talent. And then record labels come knocking, offering her this $1 million record deal.
$1 million, that's life-changing.
I know. But here's where it gets really interesting. She turns down the deal.
She turns out $1 million. Why?
Because she knew she wasn't ready. She hadn't reached that level of artistry that she envisioned for herself. She needed more time to hone her craft, to write songs that truly felt authentic to her.
That's incredible. Talk about having the courage of your convictions.
Right. It's like sometimes to achieve true mastery, we have to say no to things, even incredible opportunities, if they don't feel right. And for all the learners out there, this could mean taking that extra time to really understand a concept, even if it feels slower, or diving deep into one subject instead of skimming the surface of many.
It's about playing the long game, investing the time and energy to build that deep, lasting understanding.
And you know what? It paid off for Jewel. She eventually signed a deal on her own terms, and her debut album went on to sell over 15 million copies.
Wow, that's amazing. She achieved the success she wanted because she was willing to trust her gut, to prioritize quality over speed.
It's such an inspiring story. But it begs the question, how do we cultivate that same obsession with quality in our own work?
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, what are some practical things we can do?
Well, one of the most effective things is to invest in high-quality tools and resources. Think of it like equipping yourself for success.
Okay, so what does that look like? Are we talking like upgrading our equipment, using better software, surrounding ourselves with nice things?
It could be all those things. It's about identifying the tools that make the biggest difference in your work and then making a conscious choice to invest in them. For a writer, maybe it's a great laptop. For a musician, it could be a top-notch instrument.
It's about showing up for our work, creating an environment that supports our best effort.
Exactly. And it's not just about the physical tools either. It's about the people we surround ourselves with, too.
People who inspire us, challenge us to be better. It makes me think of the Inklings, that literary group with C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, yeah. Imagine being a fly on the wall during one of their meetings.
I know, surrounded by those brilliant minds, all pushing each other to be better.
And, you don't have to be a famous author to create your own version of that.
That's such a good point. Whether it's joining a professional group, finding an online community, or just connecting with people who share your passions.
Exactly. Iron sharpens iron, as they say. When you're surrounded by people who value quality, it elevates your own work.
Absolutely. So we've got the tools, the people.
Mm-hmm.
What else can help us really obsess over quality?
Don't underestimate the power of creating what I like to call poetic environments for your work.
Poetic environments. Okay, I'm really intrigued. Now tell me more.
It's about recognizing that our surroundings, they have this huge impact on our mental state, our creativity, our ability to do our best work. It's about crafting spaces that inspire us, that help us connect with our work on a deeper level.
So it's more than just finding a quiet spot. It's about engaging all the senses, right?
Exactly. Maybe it's setting up a dedicated workspace where you can really focus. Or maybe it's finding those inspiring spots out in the world, a cozy coffee shop, a library, or even just a park bench.
It's personal too, right? What works for one person might not do it for another.
Totally. It's about experimenting and figuring out what sparks your creativity, what helps you get in the zone. And you know what else can be surprisingly powerful? Rituals.
Rituals. Like what kind of rituals are we talking about?
It can be anything that signals to your brain, okay, it's time to focus now.
Okay, so you're saying like create those intentional transitions.
Exactly. Maybe it's lighting a candle, making a cup of tea, or just taking a few deep breaths before you dive into a project.
Or even going for a walk, meditating, journaling, anything that helps clear your mind and get you in the right headspace.
Exactly. The key is finding what works for you, what helps you create that mental space where you do your best work.
It's about bringing mindfulness and intention to our work, even when things get hectic.
And the beautiful thing about all of this is that it's not about adding more to our already full plates. It's about finding ways to infuse our work with more meaning, more joy.
And ultimately, it all comes back to those three principles of slow productivity, do fewer things, work at a natural pace, and obsess over quality.
They're all connected, aren't they? And what's so cool is that when you start implementing them, you often find that you not only produce better work, but you create more space for everything else that matters too. Relationships, passions, your own
You're
well-being.
not just becoming more productive, you're becoming more yourself.
Exactly. It's about taking back your time and energy from this cult of busyness and creating a life that feels more aligned with what truly matters to you.
It's about recognizing that true productivity isn't just about how much you get done. It's about what you create, the impact you have.
And sometimes that means slowing down.
It really does. So as we think about all of this, let's circle back to John McPhee. His writing process, it's like a perfect example of how these principles can work together.
Totally. Remember how you would spend weeks just thinking, organizing, letting those stories unfold organically?
Pure slow productivity in action. He wasn't rushing, he was trusting the process.
And the results speak for themselves. His writing is not only beautifully crafted, but it has this timeless quality, the kind of work that stays with you long after you've finished reading it.
It's a great reminder that embracing a slower, more intentional approach doesn't mean you're sacrificing quality. In fact, it often leads to the opposite.
Absolutely. Deeper craftsmanship, a more meaningful connection with your work.
And it's not just about the writing itself, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole ecosystem he creates. He finds those quiet spaces, eliminates distractions.
Those poetic environments we were talking about.
Exactly. And it reminds us that our surroundings really do have a huge impact on our ability to do our best work.
So for everyone listening, as you explore slow productivity, think about what kind of environments would help you feel more energized, focused, inspired.
Don't be afraid to experiment. What works for one person might not work for another.
The key is finding what clicks for you, what helps you tap into that flow state where your best work emerges.
Whether it's a dedicated home office, a cozy coffee shop, a park bench under a tree,
Even just a quiet corner in your house.
the most important thing is that it feels right for you, that it helps you focus and allows your creativity to flourish.
And remember, slow productivity isn't about becoming some kind of robot, rigidly following a set of rules.
It's about discovering what works for you, honoring your natural energy, your creative process, your unique way of being.
Finding a sustainable pace that allows you to do your best work without burning yourself out.
Because at the end of the day, true productivity is about more than just checking things off a to-do list.
It's about how you live your life.
Creating a life that feels aligned with your values, your passions, your purpose.
It's about making time for what truly matters, even when life gets busy.
So take a deep breath.
Slow down.
And remember, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is
Nothing at all. It really is about rediscovering that lost art, of slowing down, really savoring the process of creating something you're truly proud of, even when the world's telling you to go, go, go.
taking back our time, our energy, our attention. It's the powerful idea.
It is. And it starts with asking ourselves those big questions like, what do we really want our work to stand for? What kind of legacy are we building?
Those are big questions. And it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of that bigger picture.
Absolutely. But in the end, it's not just about how much we get done, right? It's about what we create, the mark we leave on the world.
And I think that's what's so powerful about this idea of slow productivity. It's not about doing less. It's about approaching our work with more intention, more thoughtfulness.
Yes. And sometimes that means embracing a slower pace, being okay with sitting with an idea, letting it simmer.
Like John McPhee on that picnic table staring up at that ash tree.
Exactly. Those moments of quiet contemplation can be so powerful. It's often in the stillness that our best ideas emerge.
And speaking of McPhee, his whole writing process is like a masterclass in slow productivity.
It really is. The way he meticulously organizes his thoughts, builds those narratives, piece by piece. It's like watching an architect at work.
Laying each brick with such care, knowing that the strength of the entire structure depends on that solid foundation.
It's that kind of craftsmanship, that attention to detail, that produces truly great work, work that lasts.
And it's not just about the writing itself, it's the whole environment he creates around it, finding those quiet spaces, eliminating distractions.
Those poetic environments we were talking about.
Exactly. It's such an important reminder that our surroundings have a huge impact on our mental state, on our ability to do our best work.
So for everyone listening, think about what would your ideal poetic environment look like?
What kind of space would make you feel inspired, focused, ready to create? Don't be afraid to experiment. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. The key is to find what works for you, what helps you tap into that flow state where the magic happens.
Maybe it's a dedicated home office, maybe it's a cozy coffee shop, maybe it's a park bench under your favorite tree, whatever it is, make it yours.
And remember, slow productivity isn't about becoming some kind of, productivity robot following a rigid set of rules.
It's about finding what feels right for you, honoring your own natural energy, your creative process.
It's about creating a sustainable pace, a way of working that allows you to thrive, not just survive.
Because in the end, slow productivity, it's not just about getting things done, it's about designing a life you love.
A life that's aligned with your values, your passions, your purpose.
And I think that's something we can all get behind. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to encourage everyone listening, take those principles we've talked about today, do fewer things, work at a natural pace, obsess over quality, and see how they resonate with you.
Experiment, play around with them, find what works, what helps you do your best work, and live your best life.
Because when you slow down, when you get intentional, when you focus on quality over quantity, that's when the real magic happens.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into slow productivity. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and we can't wait to have you back for our next episode.